One of the things I find interesting about Facebook is how it redefined friendship. You know, we're friends on Facebook, but the reality is we're probably more neighbors than friends with many of the people there. We ought to be called neighbors on Facebook, not friends. But hey, that's another aside. JP, you have a question that actually is a little bit longer. I'm going to actually turn on your mic and let you communicate it to. There you go. Communicate.
Yeah. No, thank you. So, just so I was thinking about the 4 different spaces and what you're sharing, and just kind of the question about how we're in a place of like with the public belonging, like a shared experience or shared things like that, and how we're in a basically like a worldwide public belonging in some sense, because we're all experiencing this coronavirus together and what that looks like. So, kind of the idea of what might be some ideas for how the church can leverage or tap into the public belonging that's already there to reach people with the gospel, while I appreciated in the book about how you said without forcing people to get intimate straight from there, like right away, so I'm just thinking about, a lot of us, I'm a senior pastor at a church in San Diego. And so one of my people was mentioning how like now every pastor is a televangelist, which I don't know how I feel about that, but you know what I mean? Like, just like now the church is so much beyond our 4 walls, and it's now, a local church can be global in a way that, may not have happened. So I would just love any input you have about how to kind of leverage or navigate a public belonging that's kind of worldwide, and then what that looks like on a church scale and for the gospel. So thank you for letting me very verbosely explain all that.
Well, thanks, JP. And man, I'd love to be in San Diego today. Although it's beautiful here in Montana with the snow. I look out my window at the Sapphire Mountain Range, and it's just unbelievable. So public belonging, as you all have read, I believe that public belonging is as significant kind of belonging as all the other belongings, right? And so belonging, let me say a couple things and maybe they'll all melt together. One, remember that probably the best definition of the Greek word for preaching and Hebrew word for preaching is broadcast and broadcasting. How will they hear unless we broadcast is really what that says. And I think that the church is being forced into a time of accepting broadcast the way that our culture broadcasts. So yes, all of us are in some way televangelists. We're probably net evangelists more than televangelists. But I would embrace that. I don't know how your churches are doing, but all the churches that I'm hearing from, they're getting more people watching every week consistently since this thing started than they ever had in the pews at any one time. And so why wouldn't you hug that, and just make it, at some point we have to get over ourselves. And I think, Rick, it comes back to what are we counting as a work of God? What are we counting as our work with God? What are we counting that God counts? And so the more, let me say it this way, JP, the more that we embrace the way the world connects publicly and bring the gospel into those ways. And I probably just misspoke because I don't actually believe that we actually bring the gospel there. It's probably already there. And we just have to help people recognize the gospel is already in this space. But if we can bring recognition into those spaces of the gospel, I think that's our duty. That's what we're here for. So any activity that does that in a public way, like I was a part of Steve Sjogren's work in Cincinnati while I was there. Are any of you familiar with Steve? Random Acts of Kindness is his big thing, And listen, Steve, his whole thing was about public belonging. You know, taking the gospel or helping people recognize the gospel in public places, going in clean toilets or handing out bottles of water in the name of Jesus was his whole gig, right? And it built his congregation, it built it on public belonging. He really didn't require anybody to get, quote unquote, closer than that. Now they did, but that was his whole gig. So I'm not sure I helped JP, but those are random thoughts.
Yeah, no, thank you.
We've got a few more questions coming up here in the chat. One, Josh Merrill, you know, he thinks this is the most important question of the day. And he wants to know, is that an old Vox AC30 amp behind you there?
It is the most important question of the day. And yes, this Vox, I believe, is a 69. It may be a 70, old Vox.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
Thanks for recognizing.
Jenny wants to know, what role can the church play in helping people who struggle with connecting to develop those spatial competencies to do so? I mean, you think about this COVID-19 situation where we're now on Zoom, you know, how can the church be a leader, maybe even a thought leader in this whole thing?
Jenny, can you unmute and can you kind of explore that a little bit more for me?
I can. Actually, let me just pull up your book. When I was reading,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, here we go. In chapter 4, you wrote, we shape environments as opposed to creating groups. When the environment is healthy, people will find connection. And just the thought that came to mind is that there are people that want to find connection. They just, for whatever reason, just can't, or just need that extra help. And I just thought back to you had that example of being at GNC and really trying to get away from that salesperson until he knocked just the right way for you to open the door. And some people need help even opening the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the balance is, I guess. How do we help people do that? Because I don't think it's just I think it's more common than not, at least what I've seen. And maybe it's just the people I'm around.
Well, I think that you're probably right. One of the reasons why I think people struggle, especially in our day, is because we're learning new habits of belonging. New habits. We're in the muck and mire of social, not only just this COVID thing, but of just, listen, I wrote Search to Belong. It was published in 2003, I think. There wasn't a Facebook. Now, just imagine a world without Facebook. And so the world is drastically changing the way we learn habits and activities of belonging. It's no wonder people struggle, right? And then you put on top of that, poor, uninformed examples that many who have some authority display or try to teach and create guilt around. Now I've just double-barreled somebody and they're trying to learn new habits. And by the way, you have to do it this way or that way, like in the church, to be counted as belonging. And now you just have a recipe for not helping people with their search. So I'm going to come back to it when I did say just do it well yourself, practice it well yourself, practice it well, understanding and giving yourself grace. will help others around you learn how to do it well. I wouldn't promote trying to teach it in, not that you can't kind of, hey, like I grew up in a family who has a high competency in addictive forms of behavior. And when I was about 10, my youth minister grabbed me and said, we're going to break this chain. And I had no idea what he was talking about. It was normal life to me. And he took me to Al-Anon and to AA meetings. Now, alcohol is not my gig, but I've gone to Al-Anon and AA meetings for now 40 some years, because these are people who are trying to their best just learn how to belong to them in themselves and to the world and practice those things. And what I learned from them is, as soon as someone tries to teach them something, we've just gone down a road that's not very helpful. But if everyone together starts trying to practice healthy and giving grace in that scene, in that environment, and creating, just like you read that someone wrote in that book, creating environments of health, we have our best chance at doing that. So I hope I'm not skirting around something that you want me to say. I don't think there's a silver bullet in this, except just try to do it well. So I have several clients right now who I'm trying to help teach them how to do Zoom well. So can I pick on some of you? Is that all right? If I pick on some of you right now? If we communicate over Zoom the way some of you have your Zoom call set up here, it would be very hard for me to communicate with you because I can't see your face. Do you see what I'm saying? We're not learning that this tool is our new pulpit, is our glass to seeing the new future. And so just little things will help you. For instance, right now, I'm going to turn this off. I have a light, just a small little light that helps you see my face better. I have a blue light in the background. Let's see if I can. That's shining against that wall that helps me separate from the background so that your eye concentrates on me better.
Interesting.
So we have to learn these little tricks of the trade and get better at things like this and practice how to do them well.